Welcome, dear listener, to a journey back in time, to an era of profound change and stark contrasts. Victorian England, as the modern world outside gently fades, let us turn our attention to a quieter yet deeply resonant corner of history. A place where the shadows of societal design met the struggles of individual lives. Tonight, we will explore a chapter not often celebrated, but one that held an undeniable grip on the imagination and the fears of an entire nation. The Victorian Workhouse. Close your eyes, if you wish, and allow your thoughts to drift. Within the separate dormitories, men on one side, women on another, children often in yet another segregated area. The rustle, of course, blankets is heard. The beds themselves are typically simple, sometimes hard straw palliases or thin mattresses laid on wooden frames. The warmth of sleep, a fleeting comfort, is quickly replaced by the morning chill that seeps through the unheated rooms. Rising in the semi-darkness, the inmates would quickly don their uniform-like clothing, rough, ill-fitting garments that marked them unmistakably as paupers. The texture against the skin would be abrasive, a constant reminder of their reduced circumstances. There's no urgency here, only the soft rhythm of discovery. After a brief period for personal ablutions, often a shared basin with cold water, the inmates would assemble for morning prayers. The prayers were not merely a spiritual exercise, but another layer of the rigid discipline that governed every hour. They served as a collective acknowledgement of their dependence, a quiet, almost meditative reaffirmation of their place within the system. Following this, the first meal of the day awaited them. The faint, metallic clang of a distant bell pierces the pre-dawn stillness, a sound both sharp and utterly relentless. Imagine a bowl of gruel, a thin, watery mixture of oatmeal or similar grain, perhaps with a touch of salt. The texture unremarkable, and the warmth, if any, quickly dissipating in the cool, cavernous dining hall. Sometimes a small piece of bread might accompany it, hard and dry. Conversations during meals were often discouraged or forbidden, adding to the silent, almost monastic atmosphere. Each spoonful, each bite, was merely fuel, devoid of comfort or pleasure. A stark contrast to the small joys many sought in the world beyond the workhouse gates. It is the workhouse bell, signaling the unwelcome dawn for hundreds, perhaps even 1,000 souls confined within its imposing walls. For men, this might involve stone breaking, grinding corn, or oakum picking, separating strands of old rope for reuse, a tedious and finger-numbing task. For women, the work typically revolved around domestic chores, washing clothes in large, steaming coppers, scrubbing floors, or preparing vegetables. Children, if old enough, would be assigned tasks like sweeping or polishing, often working alongside the adults, their small hands engaged in tasks far too repetitive for their nascent energies. The tasks were often monotonous, sometimes physically demanding, and always conducted under the watchful eye of the workhouse staff. There was little room for idleness, and even less for individual initiative. Each movement, each action was part of a larger, unyielding machine, designed to extract labor and deter reliance on public charity. The rhythm of these duties was a low, constant hum. The scraping of tools, the rustle of fabric, the quiet sighs of weary bodies. It was a rhythm intended not to inspire, slowly, persistently, until the will to resist was simply too exhausted to surface. The air is often heavy, cool, and carries the faint, mingled sense of damp stone, stale cooking, and unwashed bodies. There is no gentle awakening here, no soft light filtering through a window pane to greet the day. Instead, the darkness is abruptly shattered by the bell's summons, a daily declaration that personal time, and indeed personal will, has ceased to exist. We will walk through corridors of forgotten policy and silent despair, examining how a system born of reform came to be seen by many as a punishment for poverty itself. Imagine, for a moment, the chill that permeates old stone, the echo of footsteps on bare floors, the faint, yet persistent, hum of lives lived under a very particular kind of order. This is a story woven with threads of hardship and human resilience, a narrative that invites gentle reflection as the world outside settles into its slumber. Let the details of this distant past unfold slowly, allowing your mind to wander. As we begin our quiet descent into the heart of the Victorian Workhouse, imagine yourself, if you will, not in the comfort of your own space, but amidst the muted awakening of a vast, formidable building. As the bell's final reverberations fade, a stirring begins. The routine, once learned, rarely deviated. Food in the workhouse was designed to be sufficient for bare sustenance, but never enjoyable. It was intended to deter all but the truly destitute. With the brief sustenance consumed, the true work of the day began. From the relentless rhythm of daily duties and the muted atmosphere of communal toil, we now turn our attention to the individual voices, the echoes of lives lived within these unforgiving walls. This segment seeks to humanize the stark reality of the workhouse by exploring the myriad reasons that led people to its gates, and the quiet, often desperate struggles they faced once inside. For many, it was not a sudden impulse, but the culmination of a slow, relentless descent into destitution. Perhaps it was a sudden illness that struck down the family's sole breadwinner, leaving a widow and her children with no means of support. Imagine the gnawing fear in her heart as the last few coins dwindled. The silent terror of eviction from a cramped, rented room. The stark choice between starvation on the streets or the dreaded entry into the institution. While outright rebellion was rare and swiftly punished, the human spirit, in its quiet determination, often found subtle ways to resist the dehumanization. Consider the occasional courageous plea from an inmate to an inspecting committee, risking punishment to voice a complaint about the meager food or the harsh treatment. They remind us that behind the imposing walls and the strict regulations were human beings, each with a unique journey that led them to that grim institution, each struggling in their own way to retain a fragment of their identity, their spirit in a system designed to strip it away. While often futile, these were rare acts of agency, a flicker of the will that refused to be entirely extinguished. The desire to simply leave the workhouse, to escape its suffocating grip, was a constant, simmering urge. Imagine the planning, the hushed conversations, the desperate hope that fueled attempts to run away. Even knowing that the world outside offered little certainty and much hardship, the desperate hope of finding a relative, a chance job, anything to avoid re-entering that desolate embrace was a powerful, if often unfulfilled, motivator. Imagine the low, whispered conversations after lights out, the shared glance of understanding between two women as they picked oakum, a subtle act of solidarity in a place designed to isolate. There are accounts of inmates attempting to smuggle small comforts, a cherished photograph, a tiny piece of ribbon, hidden from the vigilant eyes of the wardens, tiny symbols of a life that refuse to be entirely erased. The chilling breath of economic downturns could sweep through communities once proud and independent without work, forcing them to swallow their pride and face the ultimate indignity. These are the voices from the shadows, individuals whose stories, though often obscured by official records, speak volumes about the true cost of poverty in Victorian England. With no family left, or families to pour themselves to offer support, the workhouse became their last grim sanctuary. Imagine an old man, perhaps a former farm laborer, whose hands, once strong and capable, now trembled with age, finding himself stripped of his few remaining possessions, facing a future of regimented anonymity after a lifetime of hard-won independence. The weight of such a transition, the silent sorrow of lost dignity, would be immense. Imagine, for a moment, the moment of decision, the final agonizing choice to seek refuge in the workhouse. Orphaned, abandoned, or simply brought in with their destitute parents, their childhoods were abruptly curtailed. Imagine the small hands attempting to pick oakum, the young eyes looking out at a world of bare walls and stern faces devoid of the play and warmth that childhood ought to hold. Their days were filled with rudimentary education, if any, and the constant threat of being sent out to service or apprenticeship, often into equally harsh conditions, effectively erasing their family ties. Consider the elderly, frail, and alone, whose years of labor had left them with nothing but worn-out bodies and fading memories. Children, too, found themselves within the workhouse's grasp, often through no fault of their own. Among these countless, often anonymous lives, there were, indeed, moments of quiet resilience, even defiance. Sometimes a bolder spirit would emerge. These individual stories, though sometimes fragmented or anecdotal, paint a picture that goes beyond the cold statistics of the poor law. From the personal narratives of endurance and quiet desperation, we now shift our focus to the physical manifestation of the workhouse system itself, its formidable architecture, a silent, stark testament to the philosophies that underpinned it. This was not merely a building. It was a deliberately designed apparatus of social control, its very structure reinforcing the principles of deterrence and segregation. The stone would be dark, perhaps blackened by soot from the burgeoning industrial cities, looming large against the often gray English sky. The architecture itself was usually austere, utilitarian, sometimes even prison-like in its formidable solidity. High walls, often devoid of welcoming features, would enclose the complex. While intended for the sick, these often overcrowded wards were a stark reflection of the medical knowledge and societal attitudes of the time. These were often unmarked, communal burial grounds, where the bodies of those who died within the workhouse walls were laid to rest. Without ceremony or individual recognition, it was not merely an institution, but a powerful symbol of the consequences of failure in an increasingly competitive world. These quiet discoveries, a child's worn shoe, a broken clay pipe, a discarded button, offer fleeting, almost ghostly glimpses into the intimate details of lives lived within these unforgiving structures. They whisper of the routines, the small struggles, and the enduring human presence within the architectural embodiment of despair. The workhouse, in its physical form and its cultural memory, remains a potent, if somber, monument to a particular solution to the pervasive problem of poverty in 19th century England. Literature of the era, from the vivid portrayals in Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist, two more subtle references in other works, cemented its image in the public consciousness as a place of last resort, a source of fear and moral dread. The very word workhouse conjured images of degradation and loss of liberty. Public perception, fueled by both moralizing rhetoric and genuine concern, oscillated between seeing it as a necessary evil for the idle and a cruel punishment for the unfortunate. Imagine the simple, unadorned earth, a silent testament to lives lived and ended in anonymity, their existence marked only in ledgers, if at all. The quiet reverence for the deceased, a fundamental human impulse, was often denied in this final act of erasure. Imagine the quiet suffering, the hushed coughs, the pervasive scent of illness and rudimentary disinfectants. Here, inmates battled not only their ailments, but also the despair of their circumstances. With limited resources and often overworked staff. For some, the infirmary would be their last stop, a quiet passage from a life of hardship. The windows might be small, set high, allowing little outward view and restricting the gaze of those within. The scent of damp stone and the faint, institutional smell of carbolic soap might linger in the air, even today, at preserved sites. This was a place built not for comfort, but for control. Imagine standing before the imposing facade of a typical Victorian workhouse. Once inside, the design principles became even clearer. The workhouse was meticulously planned to enforce separation and order. Imagine a series of distinct, often parallel, wings or courtyards, each dedicated to a specific category of inmate. Separate areas for able-bodied men, able-bodied women, the aged and children. Benches, plain tables, and communal sleeping arrangements dominated. There would be no private spaces, no personal possessions allowed beyond the absolute bare minimum sanctioned by the master. Imagine the feeling of constant, pervasive oversight, the lack of solitude in a life lived perpetually in the company of others, yet often in profound loneliness. The light, entering through those high, sparse windows, would illuminate only the hard surfaces and the unyielding routine. Families, once united outside its walls, were invariably split upon entry. Husband from wife, parents from children. A deliberate act intended to break down existing social units and prevent any communal resistance. The quiet murmur of lives lived separately, yet in close proximity, would have filled these segregated spaces. Within these wings, the dormitories and day rooms continued the theme of stark functionality. A crucial, yet often grim, component of the workhouse was its infirmary. Beyond the main buildings, many workhouses had a plot of land that served a final, poignant purpose: the pauper's grave. Culturally, the workhouse cast a long and chilling shadow over Victorian society. Archaeological findings in recent decades, from unearthed foundations to remnants of daily objects, have slowly begun to add texture to these historical accounts. From the somber architecture and the quiet remnants of the workhouse's physical presence, our final exploration turns to the minds and ideologies that conceived and sustained such a system. This segment delves into the perspectives of the ruling classes, the reformers, and the prevailing societal beliefs that shaped the workhouse, revealing the complex interplay of genuine concern, economic theory, and moral judgment that underpinned its existence. It is here that we will contrast the stark reality of the workhouse with the idealized images of Victorian life, illuminating the profound inequalities that lay just beneath the surface of an outwardly prosperous age. For the Victorians, poverty was not merely an economic condition. It was often viewed through a complex moral lens. The prevailing ideology, particularly that which informed the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834, was rooted in the belief that destitution was often, if not always, a result of moral failing, idleness, or improvidence. The comfortable, well-fed members of the middle and upper classes, who rarely encountered the true depths of destitution, often held an idealized view of industry and virtue. The deserving poor, those struck down by unavoidable misfortune, were theoretically to be treated with compassion, though in practice the system often failed to differentiate. It reveals a period where, despite rapid economic growth and grand imperial ambitions, poverty was not merely a challenge to be alleviated, but often a condition to be punished, managed, and controlled. The grasp of the workhouse was not just physical. It was a psychological hold, shaping the lives and anxieties of millions, and leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of Victorian social history. The undeserving poor, those deemed lazy or dissolute, were to be subjected to the harshest deterrents. This moral judgment, subtly woven into the fabric of the workhouse rules, cast a long shadow over the lives of its inmates. The workhouse, then, was designed not as a comfortable refuge, but as a deterrent, a place whose conditions would be so harsh, so unappealing, that only the truly desperate, and presumably the genuinely unfortunate, would seek its shelter. And fine wines, accompanied by the gentle clatter of silverware and polite conversation. On the other, the workhouse dining hall, with its thin gruel, hard bread, and enforced silence. Imagine the cozy warmth of a well-appointed parlor, glowing with the light of a crackling fire, contrasted with the communal, unheated dormitories, where the only warmth might come from the huddled bodies of the inmates. The silence of the night in a quiet, respectable neighborhood was worlds away from the occasional cries or coughs that might echo through the workhouse at odd hours. Imagine the bustling streets of London or Manchester in the mid-19th century. Many genuinely believed they were creating a more efficient and less corrupt system than the old, haphazard methods of outdoor relief. They spoke of encouraging self-reliance and discouraging pauperism. Imagine the earnest debates in parliamentary halls, the rustle of official papers, the sincere conviction in their voices as they discussed the scientific management of poverty. For them, the workhouse was a logical, if severe, solution to a national problem, a way to reduce the perceived burden on ratepayers and instill industrious habits. The smell of expensive cigars and polished leather might have hung in the air of these comfortable debating chambers, far removed from the workhouse's damp chill. The air might be thick with the scent of coal smoke, the distant clatter of hansom cabs, and the murmur of commerce. Grand new buildings rise, symbols of a burgeoning industrial empire. In fashionable homes, the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers might prevail, and the soft glow of gaslight illuminates parlors filled with comfortable furniture and abundant food. This was the outward face of Victorian progress and prosperity, an image of order, domesticity, and burgeoning wealth. Yet, lurking just beyond the fringes of this comfortable vision was the ever-present specter of poverty. Consider the perspectives of the reformers and politicians who championed the new poor law. However, beneath this veneer of benevolence and rational reform lay the stark reality of social stratification. Imagine the contrasting daily life. On one hand, the lavish Victorian dinner table, laden with roasted meats, sweet puddings. The workhouse, therefore, stands as a stark architectural and social embodiment of this profound societal divide. The workhouse, a somber echo from Victorian times, stands as a quiet reminder of an era when poverty itself was a heavy burden, a challenging chapter now receding into the silent tapestry of history. As the mists of 19th century England gently dissipate, our journey now transports us across vast oceans and millennia into the heart of an ancient, verdant world. We leave behind the stark realities of urban societal structures and turn towards the silent, entangled wonders of Mesoamerica, a realm where a brilliant civilization once flourished amidst the dense jungle. Prepare to uncover the long-held truths and the quiet demise of a remarkable culture. As we delve into the Mayans' dying secrets, what collapse really meant in the jungles of Mesoamerica. From a young age, a future Kawalaja would be steeped in a rigorous education, learning the intricate glyphs, the complex calendrical cycles, the movements of stars, and the ancient rituals that bound their world together. A Maya king was responsible not only for political leadership, but for the very well-being of the cosmos as reflected in their kingdom. Rivalries between cities, once perhaps ritualized contests, seemed to become more destructive, driven by desires for resources, captives, and prestige. Imagine the careful, strategic planning that would precede a military campaign. The rustle of battle standards in the humid air, the tension of preparing warriors, perhaps adorned with elaborate regalia. Their decisions, their successes, and ultimately their failures, resonated far beyond the royal court, sending ripples through the very fabric of their intricate societies and contributing, in ways both grand and subtle, to the long, complex process of decline. Kings would lead their armies, and captives, particularly rival kings, were highly prized, often brought back to the victor's city for public display and ritual sacrifice. These acts recorded in chilling detail on stele and temple carvings, were meant to assert dominance and reinforce the Keul Aja's power. Yet, such escalating conflict drained resources, diverted labor from agriculture, and created an environment of instability. A king's success in warfare was crucial. But failure could mean not only personal humiliation, but the weakening or even collapse of his dynasty. Droughts, poor harvests, or military defeats could be interpreted as signs of divine displeasure, or worse, as a failure of the king himself to maintain the sacred order. Imagine the silent anxieties that might accompany a particularly long dry season. The pressure to appease the rain gods, the constant need to prove one's worthiness through ritual and monumental display. The construction of new temples and stele, those grand carved stone monuments, was not merely an act of architectural ambition. It was a powerful assertion of the king's authority, his piety, and his city's prosperity. A visual testament to his ability to maintain cosmic harmony. The air they breathed would be thick with expectation, the subtle pressure of a divine mandate resting upon their young shoulders. Their early years might be a meticulous preparation for the public rituals that were so central to their power. Bloodletting ceremonies. Imagine the vibrancy of Kapan under his rule, the new stele rising in the plazas, celebrating his divine connection and his victories. Yet, his capture and subsequent sacrifice by a rival lord, Kake Tili Chan Yopat of Kriagua, marked a profound shift. Imagine the shockwaves that would have rippled through the region. The sudden loss of a powerful leader, the vulnerability of a great city. This single event, while not the sole cause, was a powerful tremor in the political landscape, illustrating how the personal fate of a king could destabilize an entire network of alliances and dependencies, where they would pierce their own flesh to offer life force to the gods, ensuring agricultural fertility and cosmic balance, and elaborate accession rituals, where they formally assumed the mantle of leadership adorned in jade quetzal feathers and the symbols of their divine connection. From the harmonious hum of a thriving Maya city, where daily life flowed with purpose and order, our focus now shifts upward to the towering pyramids and the very apex of Maya society. The kings, or Kawa, a divine lords. These were not merely rulers, but pivotal figures believed to be intermediaries between the human realm and the cosmos. Their lives, steeped in ritual and immense responsibility, were intrinsically linked to the fate of their cities, and understanding their burdens helps to illuminate the subtle, internal stresses that may have contributed to the slow fading of the classic Maya world. Imagine the life of such a king, a child born into a lineage stretching back generations, marked by destiny. Consider, for a moment, the immense weight of these expectations. The late classic period, roughly from the 7th to the 9th centuries, saw an intensification of these royal responsibilities, particularly concerning warfare. Consider the example of kings like ruler 18 Rabbit of Kopan, whose monumental building projects and military prowess marked a zenith for his city. The weight of maintaining cosmic balance, the pressures of feeding a growing population, the escalating demands of warfare and monumental construction. These were the burdens carried by the Maya kings. From the intricate world of Maya kings and the escalating pressures of their divine and earthly responsibilities, we now journey deeper into the enduring mystery of the classic Maya decline. Our guides in this exploration are not ancient texts alone, but the very earth itself and the patient, meticulous work of archaeologists who listen to the whispers from the ruins. It is within these silent, vine-entangled cities that the most tangible clues to the Maya's gradual transformation lie, waiting to be gently uncovered. Imagine yourself now, not in a bustling city, but standing within a vast, once grand plaza, eerily quiet save for the sounds of the jungle. Beneath the jungle floor, they uncover the remains of residential compounds, workshops, and agricultural terraces. Scientific methods like palynology, the study of ancient pollen, allow researchers to reconstruct past environments. While avoiding any graphic descriptions, imagine the careful study of bone fragments. It is a complex tapestry woven from these archaeological whispers, the abrupt end of monument building, the subtle shifts in daily material culture, the clear evidence of environmental strain, and the quiet signs of increasing hardship in human remains. Each piece of evidence is like a word in a forgotten language, slowly being deciphered by the diligent work of scholars, inviting us to contemplate the delicate balance between human ambition, environmental limits, and the unpredictable forces that shape the grand story of civilizations. These subtle clues can reveal patterns of health and nutrition. For example, some studies indicate increasing signs of nutritional stress, like growth arrests in later classic period populations, suggesting a less reliable food supply. Occasionally, evidence of increased interpersonal violence, such as healed fractures or subtle marks of injury, is found in population samples, hinting at rising tensions within and between communities. Perhaps as resources became scarcer, these are not dramatic scenes, but quiet, scientific insight into the physical toll of a civilization undergoing profound change. Imagine cores of earth carefully extracted from lake beds, revealing microscopic layers of pollen grains. These layers show a clear pattern of extensive deforestation during the peak Classic period, followed by evidence of increased soil erosion. The scent of ancient wood smoke, once a sign of vibrant life, might have become a scent of desperation, as forests were cleared for agriculture and building materials. This environmental transformation, driven by a growing population and intensive farming, likely played a significant role contributing to widespread drought and reduced agricultural yields. A silent, powerful force shaping human destiny. Imagine the meticulous process of excavating a forgotten household, carefully brushing away layers of soil to reveal remnants of pottery, stone tools, or cooking hearths. What they often find in the later Classic period layers are signs of stress. Less finely crafted pottery, evidence of decreased trade in prestige goods like jade and obsidian, and sometimes signs of increasingly intensive, unsustainable agricultural practices as populations strained the land. The subtle changes in the types and quality of recovered artifacts whisper of economic and social strain. A gradual erosion of the refined systems that had once sustained these complex urban centers. The towering temples and palaces, once gleaming white, are now cloaked in a velvet green mantle of moss and climbing vines. Tree roots, like slow, powerful serpents, embrace and sometimes fracture the carefully carved stone. The air is thick with humidity, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a profound contrast to the vibrant aromas we imagined earlier. This silence, this profound stillness, is itself a powerful testament to a fundamental shift, a gradual retreat of human presence. Archaeologists, like diligent detectives of the past, sift through these overgrown wonders, seeking to understand what happened to the vibrant life that once hummed within these impressive structures. One of the most striking pieces of evidence is the cessation of monumental construction. Imagine the last stone being laid on a temple, the final glyph carved into a stela. Then, silence. For centuries, Maya cities had continuously erected these grand statements of power and piety. But by the late 9th century, in the southern lowlands, this practice largely ceased. The tools were put down, the quarries abandoned, the massive labor forces dispersed. This wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic stop, but a tapering off, a slowing down, suggesting a gradual loss of centralized authority or the resources to command such vast projects. The very absence of new monuments speaks volumes, a quiet testament to a changing era. Beyond the majestic temples, archaeologists also examine the more mundane evidence of daily life. The jungle itself, while beautiful, also holds clues. And within the very earth, skeletal remains, always treated with profound respect, also offer their quiet testimony. The mystery of the Maya collapse, therefore, is not a simple riddle with a single answer. From the profound silence of the jungle-clad ruins, where the whispers of a past civilization slowly reveal their secrets through the patient work of archaeology, we now turn our attention to the resilience of the human spirit. The story of the Maya collapse is not one of disappearance, but of profound transformation. While the grand urban centers of the southern lowlands faced a long, agonizing decline, life continued, adapted, and indeed flourished in other forms and in new regions. This segment explores the diverse ways in which the Maya people navigated this period of intense change, highlighting their enduring spirit. As central authority waned in many areas, new forms of leadership and social organization likely emerged at a more local level. It was not an extinction, but a profound reorganization and a testament to cultural resilience. The intricate Maya writing system, though less frequently carved onto public monuments in the south, continued to be used, and elements of Maya calendrical knowledge persisted. The Maya people, with their rich traditions, their deep connection to the land, and their profound understanding of the cosmos, did not disappear. They endured. They migrated. They adapted. They innovated. And their cultural identity flowed like a deep river, sometimes shifting course, but never truly drying up. Imagine the village elders, rather than powerful kings, becoming the primary figures of authority, guiding their communities through uncertain times, and forming the foundation for the diverse Maya communities that flourish today throughout Mesoamerica. Imagine their descendants living in villages and towns, speaking Maya languages, practicing ancient crafts, and maintaining a spiritual connection to their ancestors and the timeless rhythms of the jungle. Their survival and transformation are perhaps the greatest secrets revealed by the collapse. A powerful testament to the enduring human capacity for adaptation, resilience, and the quiet continuation of culture even in the face of monumental change. The emphasis would have been on collective survival, on maintaining essential agricultural practices, and on preserving core cultural traditions through oral histories, family customs, and quiet spiritual practices, even if the grand public ceremonies of the past were no longer performed. The weight of ancestral knowledge, passed down through generations, became even more vital in the absence of centralized guidance. And the remarkable ability of a culture to persist even as its established structures fade. Imagine, for a moment, the shift in population as the great cities of the classic period, like Tikal and Palenque, experienced a gradual depopulation, their grand plazas becoming quieter, their temples less frequently ascended. The people did not simply vanish. Instead, they adapted. Many moved, often to the rural areas surrounding these once vibrant centers, returning to a simpler, more decentralized way of life. The focus shifted from monumental construction and elaborate courtly rituals to the more immediate concerns of subsistence. Imagine small farming communities, perhaps slightly more isolated, yet still maintaining the core practices of maize cultivation, pottery production, and the deep reverence for their ancestral lands. The rhythm of their lives, though perhaps stripped of former grandeur, found new patterns of continuity. Crucially, other regions of the Maya world experienced a very different trajectory. While the southern lowlands saw decline, the northern Maya lowlands, encompassing areas of modern day, continued to thrive and even prosper. Cities like Chichen Itza and Uxmal rose to prominence, developing distinct architectural styles and complex social structures that built upon, yet diverged from, the traditions of the classic period south. Imagine walking through the bustling markets of Chichen Itza during its post-classic peak. The sounds of trade and ritual just as vibrant as those once heard in the abandoned cities further south. The scent of incense and cooking might still fill the air, but the style of dress, the forms of ritual, and the political organization would have subtly evolved. This regional disparity highlights that the collapse was not uniform. It was a complex, localized phenomenon. For the common people, life during this period of transformation would have been marked by adaptability. The very concept of collapse for the Maya is, in many ways, a misnomer. From the ashes of the classic cities, new expressions of Maya culture emerged, contributing to later periods of history. The ancient Maya, a civilization that transformed rather than vanished, continues to whisper lessons of resilience from the heart of the jungle, a testament to the enduring human spirit. As the echoes of ancient Mesoamerica gently fade into the verdant quiet, our journey now makes a profound leap across time and continents, carrying us to 18th century Europe. Here, amidst the burgeoning ideas of reason, liberty, and human advancement, an age known as the Enlightenment promised to illuminate the world. We now turn our attention to those who resided even further from the radiant glow of Enlightenment ideals. These are the voices from the margins, individuals and groups whose very existence challenged the era's pronouncements of universal rights and freedoms, for whom progress remained a distant, often cruel irony. Despite the Enlightenment's emphasis on religious tolerance, the reality for many Jewish communities, for instance, often remained one of social ostracization, legal restrictions, and periodic persecution. Imagine the enclosed streets of a Jewish ghetto in a European city, the quiet hum of community life within its boundaries, yet always overshadowed by walls that symbolized exclusion. The subtle scent of old books and spices might permeate the air within their homes, a contrast to the often hostile world outside. Their struggles and quiet acts of resilience reveal the inherent contradictions of a period that championed reason and liberty, yet often failed to extend these fundamental dignities to all. They were denied full citizenship, restricted in their professions, and often subjected to special taxes, their lives a testament to the gap between abstract ideals and lived experience. Yet, like all periods of grand progress, this era to cast its own subtle shadows, revealing that the light of progress did not, in fact, reach every corner. While a select few aristocratic women might host influential salons, most women, regardless of social standing, faced significant legal and social constraints. They possessed limited property rights, almost no political voice, and their education, if any, was generally focused on domestic skills. For working-class women, their days were a double burden. The exhausting labor in fields or factories, as we touched upon earlier, coupled with the ceaseless demands of household management and child rearing. Imagine the ache in their bones at the end of a long day of washing clothes by hand, the smell of wood ash and stale water clinging to their garments as they return to a small, often chaotic home. An unmarried woman might face even greater precarity, often forced into domestic service, where she was vulnerable and entirely dependent on her employer's whims. Their struggles were often silent, their contributions foundational yet unacknowledged by the grand narratives of the era. The 18th century was the zenith of the transatlantic slave trade, a vast, dehumanizing system fueled by European demand for colonial goods. Imagine a young person desperate for a new life or escaping poverty, signing away years of their freedom in exchange for passage to a new land. The promise of opportunity often gave way to grueling labor, strict discipline, and a precarious existence, little different in its daily grind from the lives of slaves, though theoretically temporary. The scent of tar and salt might cling to them on the voyage, replaced by the unfamiliar smells of a new continent, only to find a new form of bondage. While thinkers penned treatises on liberty, countless Africans were forcibly removed from their homes, enduring the unimaginable horrors of the Middle Passage. Imagine the stifling, oppressive air in the hold of a slave ship, the pervasive smell of fear and sickness, the constant low murmur of human suffering. Upon arrival in the colonies, their lives became defined by relentless labor, often on sugar or tobacco plantations under the relentless sun. The rhythmic swing of a machete in a cane field, the taste of salt from unending sweat, the feeling of coarse fabric against blistered skin. These were the immediate, inescapable sensory details of their existence. Their resilience, their quiet acts of sabotage, their spiritual resistance, and the vibrant cultures they forged in impossible circumstances speak volumes about the human spirit's refusal to be utterly extinguished, even when denied basic humanity by the very societies championing freedom. We will now quietly explore the Enlightenment's dark underbelly. Why progress did unreach everyone in 18th century Europe, inviting you to consider the complex, often unseen realities beneath the gleaming veneer of reason. From the quiet toil of the fields and the ceaseless clamor of the crowded city streets, where the common European endured the daily weight of physical labor and uncertain subsistence. Imagine, if you will, the profound chasm that separated the philosophical debates in European salons from the brutal realities across the Atlantic. Closer to the heart of Europe, yet still often excluded, were various religious minorities. Consider also the lives of women, particularly those from the working classes or those unmarried. Even among the European working class, a subtle form of exclusion existed in the form of indentured servitude. These are just a few of the voices from the margins. Their experiences a stark, poignant counterpoint to the era's soaring declarations of universal human rights. From the personal hardships and quiet resilience of those on the margins, whose lives were largely untouched by the Enlightenment's grand promises, we now turn our gaze to the underlying, often unseen structures that maintained this stark imbalance. These were the physical and conceptual frameworks of 18th century European society, designed not by the philosophers in their gilded salons, but by centuries of entrenched power, economic imperatives, and deep-seated cultural norms. As we have gently touched upon in previous reflections, these institutions, though sometimes offering basic shelter, were deliberately harsh, enforcing a strict regimen to deter all but the most desperate. While European intellectuals debated freedom and self-governance, vast wealth flowed into Europe from its colonies, often extracted through coerced labor and the systematic subjugation of non-European peoples. Imagine the long, winding sea routes across the globe, silently carrying goods. Sugar, tobacco, cotton, minerals, back to European ports, the engines of a burgeoning consumer culture. And the deep-seated cultural hierarchies operated beneath the luminous surface of Enlightenment thought. They were the enduring foundations upon which much of 18th century European society rested, silently ensuring that while ideas of progress and liberty flourished for some, their practical benefits remained out of reach for a vast, often silent majority. It is in understanding these deeper frameworks that we truly grasp the nuanced, often paradoxical nature of this pivotal historical era. The clatter of crates on the docks, the shouts of merchants, the scent of exotic spices mingling with the smell of tar. These were the immediate sensory experiences of this global trade. What remained unseen by many European consumers were the brutal conditions on distant plantations, the forced labor that produced these goods, and the violence inherent in their acquisition, the very foundations of European prosperity, which allowed for leisure and intellectual pursuit among the elite, were often built upon systems that fundamentally denied the human rights of others on a global scale. Imagine the monotonous visual of their uniform appearance, the lack of ornamentation, the feeling of being stripped of individual identity upon entry. The concept of reason itself, while celebrated, was often implicitly understood to be the domain of educated, propertied men. Women, regardless of their intellect, were largely excluded from formal education, from public life, and from legal personhood, their sphere confined to the domestic. Imagine the quiet, unspoken rules that govern social interactions, the deference expected from servants to masters, from the lower classes to the aristocracy, the subtle rustle of silk as a lady passed, the quiet footsteps of a servant behind her. These visual and auditory cues reinforced a rigid social order. Even new scientific discoveries, while thrilling to some, were slow to dismantle superstitions or traditional beliefs among the broader population, whose daily lives were often governed by age-old customs and fears. These structures, though often framed as charitable, were fundamentally about ordering society, separating the deserving from the undeserving, and ensuring that the poor remained a disciplined labor force rather than a threat to the established order. They formed a dark underbelly, quietly constraining the very liberty that reason was supposed to champion. Imagine, for a moment, the architecture of control that permeated the urban landscape, often hidden in plain sight. While new public squares and academies rose in elegant symmetry, another form of building proliferated: the prison. These were not the reformed, rehabilitative institutions envisioned by later centuries, but often grim, overcrowded places designed for containment and punishment. Imagine the cold, damp stone walls of a debtor's prison, the faint, persistent smell of stale air and human despair, the clang of heavy iron doors, the jingle of keys. These were the sounds that punctuated the days for those who, through misfortune or crime, fell afoul of a rigid justice system. This era, despite its intellectual fervor, maintained brutal forms of public punishment, with executions and corporal penalties serving as stark, visible deterrents. A powerful reminder that rights were not universal, but contingent upon one's place in the social order. Alongside prisons, poorhouses, and workhouses, while perhaps less architecturally imposing than grand palaces, served a similar function of social sorting and control for the destitute. Beyond the visible architecture, even more pervasive were the invisible structures of economic exploitation, particularly those tied to colonial empires. Cultural practices and deeply ingrained social hierarchies also formed unseen walls, limiting the reach of Enlightenment ideas. These unseen structures, the punitive justice systems, the institutions for social control, the economics of global exploitation, from the unseen structures that subtly, yet powerfully, constrained the lives of the majority in 18th century Europe. We now gently ascend to the glittering surface of the Enlightenment itself. Our focus shifts to the very individuals who articulated its grandest ideals: the philosophers, the scientists, the patrons of art and reason, who gathered in elegant salons and bustling academies. It is here, amidst their intellectual pursuits, that we encounter this is where the paradox truly emerges. While intellectuals extolled liberty, the institution of slavery, as we touched upon, continued to thrive and expand, underpinning much of the colonial wealth that flowed into Europe. Some Enlightenment thinkers even attempted to rationalize it, using spurious arguments about race or intellectual capacity, a painful betrayal of their own principles of human universalism. The Enlightenment was indeed a powerful engine of intellectual change, laying the groundwork for many of our modern concepts of human rights and governance. Yet, it also existed within, and sometimes perpetuated, a world of deep-seated inequality, exploitation, and unacknowledged suffering. This complex tension between high ideals and harsh realities forms the dark underbelly of a period often romanticized for its radiant light. Imagine the philosopher penning an eloquent passage on freedom, while the sugar sweetening his tea was produced by enslaved labor thousands of miles away. The silence of this contradiction, the lack of immediate, widespread action against such profound injustice, is a notable shadow of the era. The philosopher's paradox, the striking contrast between their theoretical discussions of universal rights and the enduring, often deeply contradictory realities of the societies they inhabited, denying them the very freedom of movement and individual autonomy so cherished in Enlightenment thought. They were largely considered intellectually inferior, inherently emotional, and suited only for domestic roles. While a few brave female voices, like Mary Wollstonecraft, would begin to challenge these assumptions later in the century. The prevailing cultural norm, often reinforced by male philosophers themselves, was that women did not share in the universal rights proclaimed for men. Imagine the intellectual frustration of an intelligent woman excluded from universities and public discourse, confined to her home. Her keen mind yearning for the same freedoms and opportunities enjoyed by her male counterparts, yet silenced by societal expectation. Imagine the quiet despair of a serf bound to the soil, unable to leave without permission, their labor endlessly enriching a distant noble. The concept of inherent rights, discussed so passionately in the salons, rarely extended to the peasant who toiled in the fields just outside the city walls, whose very life was governed by the will of their lord. Imagine, if you will, the soft glow of candlelight illuminating a Parisian salon, perhaps a gathering at the home of a prominent hostess like Madame Geoffrin. The air would be filled with the subtle scent of beeswax, candles, expensive perfumes, and freshly brewed coffee. The gentle murmur of animated conversation would rise and fall, punctuated by the rustle of silk gowns and the quiet clink of porcelain cups. Here, gathered in polite society, were the luminaries of the age: Voltaire, Diderot, Rousseau, and countless others, exchanging ideas, debating the nature of government, society, and the very rights of man. Their words, penned in sprawling volumes of the oar-sharp political pamphlets, spoke of liberty, equality, and the inherent dignity of all human beings. Consider the daily lives of these Enlightenment elite. They moved through a world of comparative comfort and intellectual stimulation. Imagine the soft feel of fine velvet upholstery in their studies, the rich aroma of old books and fresh ink. Their days might be filled with writing, conducting scientific experiments, attending lectures, or engaging in spirited philosophical discourse. They championed the scientific method, advocating for observation and empirical evidence over superstition and dogma. New discoveries in astronomy, physics, and medicine brought a profound sense of optimism and a belief in humanity's capacity for endless improvement. The promise of reason, like a guiding star, seemed to lead towards a more just and rational world. Yet, this radiant vision of universal progress often existed in stark, uncomfortable contrast with the concrete realities of their own time and their own lives. Similarly, within Europe, the ancient system of serfdom persisted in many Eastern European states, chaining millions to the land. And then there was the question of gender. Despite the theoretical celebration of mankind, the Enlightenment's grand pronouncements of universal rights almost invariably excluded women. The philosopher's paradox, then, is a profound reminder that ideas, however noble, do not always translate seamlessly into lived reality. The Enlightenment, a brilliant age of ideas, reminds us that history's progress is often complex and uneven, with light and shadow intermingling in the human story. As the debates of Enlightenment Europe gently recede into the quiet of the past, journey now makes a profound leap across continents and millennia, carrying us to the heart of Southeast Asia. Here, nestled within the dense emerald embrace of the Cambodian jungle, lies the enduring mystery of Angkor, a city not merely lost to time, but a colossal testament to an astonishing human endeavor. We will now gently peel back the layers of lush foliage to discover the lost city of Angkor, what it was really like to build a civilization in the Cambodian jungle, inviting you to contemplate the quiet, monumental effort behind this ancient marvel. From the rhythmic sounds of stone shaping and water flowing, the pervasive hum of collective effort that defined daily life in ancient Angkor, we now turn our attention to the figures whose colossal vision of kings transformed the Cambodian landscape. From childhood, Such a figure would be immersed in a world of profound religious significance, steeped in the Hindu and later Buddhist traditions that infused every aspect of life. The scent of incense would linger in the royal temples. The chants of priests would fill the palace courtyards. His vision, deeply influenced by Mahayana Buddhism, was markedly different, yet equally monumental. He saw himself not merely as a god king, but as a bodhisattva, a compassionate being dedicated to alleviating the suffering of his people. Picture the stark contrast of his emergence from conflict, imbued with a purpose to rebuild and heal. His ambition was expressed not only in the construction of Bayon, with its multitude of serene, smiling faces, but also in a vast network of hospitals, rest houses along major roads, and extensive reservoirs. Imagine the sounds of construction echoing across a city newly dedicated to healing and welfare. The rhythmic chanting of Buddhist monks mingling with the calls of laborers. Jayavarman, the seventh projects, while still requiring immense human effort, reflected a profound shift in emphasis from the individual glory of the king to the collective well-being of his subjects, creating a new sense of communal purpose that permeated Angkor. And the intricate mythology of deities and cosmic order would be woven into their very understanding of leadership. They had to manage a complex bureaucracy, maintain control over a vast empire through alliances and sometimes through warfare, and contend with the unpredictable nature of the monsoon climate. Imagine the tension preceding a major military campaign, the rustle of silk banners, the scent of dust and anticipation. The success of a king in warfare was often seen as divine favor, solidifying his reign and providing access to resources and labor. Yet, these conflicts also brought a cost, diverting energy and attention from the peaceful pursuits of construction and water management. This deep spiritual foundation was not merely personal. It was the bedrock of their legitimacy. Their spiritual convictions provided the ultimate purpose. Their political ambitions fueled the scale, and their ability to command vast resources allowed for the realization of these monumental dreams. These were lives lived at the pinnacle of their world, profoundly connected to the spiritual and physical well-being of their kingdom, leaving behind a legacy of stone and water that continues to inspire. A king's ability to maintain harmony between the earthly and divine realms was paramount, believed to ensure prosperity for his people and the fertility of the land. The construction of Angkor was not merely a testament to the labor of thousands, but a grand expression of the power, piety, and whose name is inextricably linked with the creation of Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument in the world. Imagine the audacity of his vision. This was not a king content with merely inheriting his predecessor's glory. He sought to establish a new, even grander, spiritual, and political center. His life would have been a complex dance between religious devotion, military conquest, and architectural ambition. The challenges he faced were immense, mobilizing an unprecedented labor force, securing vast quantities of sandstone from quarries kilometers away, and orchestrating the precise engineering required for such a colossal structure. The quiet determination that must have driven him. The strategic brilliance in marshaling resources, and the unwavering belief in his divine mandate are almost palpable even across the centuries. His grand temple, dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, was a symbolic mountain, a cosmic home for the deity, and ultimately his own mausoleum, a physical manifestation of his enduring legacy, and political ambition of a succession of Khmer monarchs whose spiritual beliefs and strategic brilliance shaped the very contours of this extraordinary civilization. Imagine, if you will, the early life of a prince destined to become a Devaraja, or God King, a central concept in Khmer cosmology. Consider the remarkable Suryavarman II, who reigned in the early 12th century. Then imagine the reign of Jayavarman VII, who came to power in the late 12th century, following a period of turmoil and invasion. The challenges these kings faced were not just logistical. They were also political and environmental. Ultimately, the vision of kings in Angkor was an extraordinary force that shaped the very landscape. From the grand visions that shaped the landscape of Angkor, the ambitions and spiritual devotion of the Khmer kings, we now delve into the very earth itself to discover the tangible evidence of how such colossal dreams were made real. The air is still, heavy with moisture, carrying the scent of rich, dark earth and the sweet decay of fallen leaves. Sunlight filters through the thick foliage, dappling the ground in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Here, amidst the tangle of roots and vines, are the quiet clues that tell the story of unparalleled human ingenuity. Imagine the delicate ping of a metal chisel against stone, as an artisan meticulously carved a scene from the Ramayana, or a graceful Apsara dancer. The fine dust of sandstone would linger in the air, catching the sunlight as intricate details emerged from the raw rock. The tropical environment relentlessly reclaims what was once built. The constant growth of vegetation, the heavy rains, and the sheer scale of the buried city. Yet, through patient excavation, remote sensing, and the careful analysis of the smallest fragments, archaeologists continue to listen to the whispers beneath the green canopy, slowly revealing the astonishing techniques, the forgotten ingenuity, and the enduring mysteries of how Angkor was truly built. The precise interlocking of the blocks, often without a mortar, showcases an understanding of weight distribution and structural integrity that fascinates engineers even today. And subtle variations in style to understand the progression of work and the diverse hands that shaped these sacred spaces. The work is meticulous, unhurried, often involving the careful clearing of centuries of jungle growth, revealing stone structures that have slumbered beneath the earth's embrace. Beyond the visible temples, aerial surveys and ground-penetrating radar have revealed an astonishingly complex system of hydraulic engineering. Imagine the quiet revelation as images from above show the vast rectilinear outlines of the berets, immense reservoirs, and the intricate web of canals that once crisscrossed the landscape. These weren't just decorative ponds. They were sophisticated water management systems designed to capture monsoon rains and distribute water year-round for agriculture and urban consumption. The subtle gurgle of water through an ancient sluice gate, the feeling of damp soil near a now dry canal. These are the silent clues to a mastery of hydrology that sustained a vast population. The exact functioning of some aspects of this system and how precisely it contributed to both Angkor's rise and eventual decline remains an active area of gentle inquiry, a quiet puzzle within the jungle. Our journey takes us beneath the green canopy, where the patient work of archaeology and the enduring presence of the jungle reveal the precise techniques and the remaining mysteries of Angkor as construction. Humid forest that now embraces so much of Angkor, one of the most profound mysteries, now largely understood through archaeological and geological studies, is the sourcing and movement of the immense quantities of stone. Angkor's grand temples, like Angkor Wat, are primarily built from sandstone. Imagine standing at a sandstone quarry, perhaps on the slopes of Panam Kalan, kilometers away from the construction sites. The air might once have resonated with the rhythmic thud of mallets and chisels as skilled quarrymen carefully separated massive blocks from the bedrock. The sheer scale of extraction is almost unfathomable. Millions of cubic meters of stone were removed, shaped, and then transported. The journey of these colossal stones was a testament to extraordinary human effort and ingenuity. Imagine them slowly being moved through the dense jungle. They weren't simply dragged. Evidence suggests a sophisticated network of canals and waterways played a crucial role, especially during the monsoon season when water levels were high. Picture the heavy, wet sandstone blocks being carefully floated on rafts or sleds through these man-made channels. The splash of water, the slow, steady movement, a stark contrast to the rapid transit we are accustomed to today. On land, rollers made from tree trunks, and the immense pulling power of human and animal labor would have propelled the stones along specially constructed earthen causeways. The ground beneath would have vibrated with the slow, ponderous passage of these behemoths, Once, at the construction site, the carving began. This was not merely utilitarian masonry. It was a sublime art form. And then there's the water, the lifeblood of Angkor, and perhaps its greatest enduring mystery. The challenges of uncovering these secrets are formidable. From the quiet archaeological revelations of Angkor's ingenious construction techniques, hidden beneath the jungle's persistent embrace, we now turn to the human tapestry that brought these wonders to life. This vast civilization, with its unsparing temples and intricate water systems, was a meticulously structured society, characterized by a profound contrast between the grandeur and the grind. It is here that we truly understand the immense social effort, the shared devotion, and the daily realities that sustained such monumental ambition. Their rituals were not merely symbolic. They were seen as essential for the cosmos to remain in balance, ensuring the rains, the harvests, and the prosperity of the kingdom. Here lay the daily grind that fueled the entire civilization. Imagine the farmers, their skin tanned by the relentless sun, their muscles hardened by constant toil in the rice paddies. The common people, whether farmers or laborers, understood their place within this cosmic order. It was a civilization built on a foundation of profound spiritual belief, realized through extraordinary engineering, and sustained by the disciplined, dedicated, and often unseen daily grind of its populace. This balance, so meticulously maintained for centuries, allowed for the flourishing of a culture that continues to awe us with its grandeur and the quiet testament of its human achievement. Their contributions to the temples and the water systems were not merely forced labor, but often seen as acts of piety, gaining merit and ensuring cosmic harmony. We have gently moved from the daily rhythms of stone and water to the sweeping visions of kings, uncovered the quiet mysteries beneath the green canopy, but about the countless, often anonymous, lives that were lived in their shadow and contributed to their very existence. Angkor stands as a silent, powerful testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and the enduring connection between a people, their beliefs, and the environment they shaped, and contemplated the profound interplay between the elite and the laborers that brought this extraordinary world into being. Feel the peacefulness of your surroundings and the steady rhythm of your breath. The quiet wonder of Angkor, with its profound lessons of collective endeavor and human possibility, can now lull you gently towards a deep and tranquil sleep. Imagine the quiet pride of a farmer looking towards a newly completed temple, knowing that his rice helped feed the builders, his taxes helped fund the project, and his devotion was acknowledged by the gods. The collective identity of the Khmer people was deeply rooted in this symbiotic relationship. The king's divine mandate, the priest's spiritual guidance, and the common people's tireless labor and unwavering faith. The feeling of cool, muddy water between their toes. The soft rustle of rice stalks as they moved with practiced efficiency. These were the immediate sensations of their existence. Their labor, though arduous, was fundamental. They were the silent architects of abundance, ensuring the food security that allowed the elite to pursue their grand religious and administrative projects. The very stability of Angkor rested upon their consistent, tireless effort. Imagine witnessing a grand royal procession, the vibrant colors of banners, the distant beat of drums, the solemn expressions of priests, and the reverence of the crowds lining the causeways. Imagine the sculptor, his hands calloused from years of gripping a chisel, his back aching from hours spent hunched over a sandstone block, painstakingly bringing a deity or a historical scene to life. The fine dust of the stone would settle on his skin, the constant vibration of the hammer, a familiar thrum in his bones. Consider the thousands of unnamed laborers, tasked with the most physically demanding work, quarrying, dragging, and lifting immense blocks of stone, often under the direct supervision of overseers. The air around them would be thick with the smell of sweat and exertion, punctuated by the grunts of effort and the lowing of water buffalo. Their lives were a constant rhythm of physical demand, yet infused with a shared sense of contributing to something grander than themselves, building temples for the gods, ensuring the spiritual well-being of their kingdom. Such events, while seemingly theatrical, were vital acts of state, reinforcing the king's divine right and solidifying the social hierarchy. Imagine, if you will, the lives of the Khmer elite, the royalty, high priests, and noble officials who resided within the inner sanctums of Angkor. Their days would unfold amidst opulent surroundings, within palaces built of fine wood, adorned with gleaming bronze and precious silks. The air would be infused with the delicate scent of exotic flowers and fragrant incense, a constant presence in their rituals and daily routines. Imagine the soft rustle of their rich garments, woven with intricate patterns, as they moved through shaded courtyards, perhaps listening to the gentle strains of court music or the rhythmic chanting of Brahmins. Their meals would be lavish, a symphony of exotic flavors and textures served on gleaming metalware. Their lives were dedicated to spiritual practice, political governance, scholarly pursuits, and the patronage of the arts, all supported by the labor of vast numbers of people. These elite figures were the embodiment of the divine order, believed to be indispensable intermediaries between the human realm and the powerful Hindu or Buddhist deities. To the surrounding villages and the vast, agricultural lands. Alongside the farmers, countless artisans and laborers form the backbone of Angkor's monumental construction. The social hierarchy, while rigid, was also deeply intertwined with religious devotion. This profound interplay between the sacred and the mundane, the opulence of the few and the relentless effort of the many, truly defined Angkor. As the last echoes of ancient Angkor's grandeur and its human grind softly recede, and the intricate narrative of a civilization built against the Cambodian jungle settles around us, we draw to a close our quiet exploration. Tonight, we have seen that the creation of monumental civilizations is not just about the grand structures that endure. Now, as the rich details of Khmer history softly fade, allow the gentle current of these reflections to guide your own thoughts.